The 2006 Formula One season saw the championship take on an even sharper, more competitive edge. Here at Enstone in Oxfordshire, Renault were starting the season as double world champions. The likes of Ferrari, McLaren and Honda were determined to make sure that their newfound status was short-lived. But 2006 was also a genuine drivers' championship between the sport's newest number one and its most prolific world champion. It was Alonso against Schumacher. It was a championship battle that had just about everything, and Martin Brundle and myself have come here to Renault headquarters to reflect on it all. It was the kind of season that Formula One needed.
It's been a brilliant season of Grand Prix motor racing, certainly the one I've most enjoyed commentating on. We've had two of the all-time greats in Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher head-to-head, and the championship going down to the wire. Plenty of controversy, even a little skullduggery in Monte Carlo.
But it was the end of an era for Schumacher and for Ferrari in particular.
And I've come to Maranello, Italy to talk to Ross Brawn here about the miracle that he and Michael Schumacher and the others created and how the team is going to survive without them.
And of course it was also the season that at last featured the breakthrough win for Britain's Jenson Button. He'll relive all the drama of that Hungarian Grand Prix. It was always going to be a season with a difference. A new three-part qualifying system, a return of tyre changes and the move to V8 engines required by the rules to last through two races. Round one in the championship was Bahrain.
This was an intense championship filled with controversy and rivalry, setbacks, comebacks, disappointments and surprises. The big fight was between Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher, the old master desperate for one more title before retirement versus the young charger so similar in talent and application. Other drivers won races, but these two were in a class of their own. The first half of the season pointed to Fernando Alonso and Renault cruising to an easy second successive title. They were consistently quick, whereas Ferrari didn't get the start they needed. In Bahrain, faults in the pistons led to engine failures. In desperation, Ferrari flew in brand new engines on a private jet from Italy. Then their flexing rear wings attracted the FIA's attention in Malaysia. Strengthening them was an unwelcome diversion. In Australia, they chose the wrong tyres and struggled to keep even the Toro Rossos behind. Trying to make up for the mistake, Michael made a costly error.
Oh, Schumacher pushing enormously hard. He has dropped it on the final corner and hit the wall.
3 races down, Michael was angry and even a little confused as his rival cruised to his second win of the season.
And what a great win for Fernando Alonso. A Renault hat-trick then so far this season.
With 3 out of 3 to Renault, Ferrari had to wait until the return to Europe brought a return to winning ways and their first victories of the season at Imola and the Nürburgring.
And Schumacher then looking for 2 victories in a row. He makes it here at the Nürburgring, and that was brilliant by Michael Schumacher.
The smiles from Ferrari boss Jean Todt and from Schumacher said it all. The Renault charge had been halted, and with 5 races now run, the battle appeared to be heating up.
As the World Championship moved into the summer, Michelin found a tyre advantage in Barcelona, allowing Fernando Alonso to cruise to an emotional home win and further tighten his grip on the championship. But then came Monaco, a race that would promise so much, but deliver only controversy and acrimony in qualifying.
That's going to spoil everybody else's lap too. The yellow flags are going to be out. That's going to keep him pole position. I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Renault estimated Alonso lost 0.3 of a second, which would have given him pole position. There was open anger in the pit lane. Schumacher's manoeuvre was viewed as a cynical move, a deliberate accident.
He's not touching the barrier, touching nothing. It's very, he's just parking the car.
But Michael's a 7-time champion, a sportsman. Would he really do something like that?
I don't know. This is the way Ferrari manage,
Would Michael do something like that deliberately?
Not the Michael I know.
Schumacher protests his innocence to this day, but sensationally the FIA ruled he had done it on purpose and sent him to the back of the grid. Alonso grabbed the win, and Michael, hurt by the vicious criticism from the paddock and from some fans, started thinking about his future. Silverstone was a story of tyres again. Bridgestone were working their way out of a slump, while Alonso on the Michelins won easily.
Beautiful, lovely race, mate. Really, really good, fantastic result. Well done, mate.
It's a very important Grand Prix in the calendar, Silverstone, probably the home of the motorsport here in England. All Formula 1 teams, 80% of Formula 1 teams are from England, and this is always a special Grand Prix to win.
Renault locked out the front row of the grid and won again in Canada, Alonso stretching his championship lead to a massive 25 points. Over the first half of the season then, Fernando Alonso had scored 84 out of a possible 90 points. But little would he suspect the change of fortune that lay ahead.
Halfway into the season and the championship battles seemed to be going Renault's way, but the US Grand Prix at Indianapolis was a turning point, even if we didn't realise it at the time. Renault's poor performance was blamed on Michelin being over-conservative in tyre supply after the farce of the 2005 race when the Michelin runners had to pull out because their tyres were unsafe. But Ferrari and Bridgestone had also made big steps forward.
Fantastic weekend, very good feeling. 5 times winning here, taking 6 points from the championship, Filippo on the podium, Germany winning on Friday, yesterday pole position. Many reasons to be very happy.
And things were about to get rather difficult for Renault as the pendulum began to swing away from them. The team had been running a mass damper device located in the nose cone to optimise their car's performance over curbs, but it was subject to technical protests, and in Germany it was banned, leading to accusations of favouritism by the FIA. It hurt Renault badly, and in the middle of the summer testing ban it was hard to recover.
A lot of people love conspiracy theories, don't they? They're great fun. But I do believe men landed on the moon, and I do believe that we're going to win the World Championship.
The result of the Turkish race was largely predetermined in qualifying when Schumacher made a mistake on his first hot lap. He was overcautious next time round, and that left the door open for teammate Massa to go for glory. The Brazilian was overjoyed with his first ever pole position and reaped the rewards in the race when the safety car came out onto the track. Ferrari had to service Massa first in the pits, whilst Michael queued behind. This lost him valuable time and enabled Fernando Alonso to steal second place, a position he would keep despite coming under tremendous pressure from the German.
Across the line! No! Alonso picks up second. Michael Schumacher picks up third.
It was a massive save for Alonso, and with Renault still re-engineering their car to cope with the loss of the mass damper, it came at a crucial time.
It seemed Renault had rediscovered some speed as we arrived in Monza, but there the championship battle would take another highly controversial turn. Ferrari complained that Alonso had held up Massa in qualifying. The Renault had damaged bodywork from an earlier puncture and so was up against the clock. Telemetry showed Alonso was 90 metres ahead of the Ferrari, close enough, so the steward said, to ruin Massa's lap and earn Alonso a grid penalty, bumping him down to 10th. It led to a remarkable response from the Spaniard.
I tried to fight for the sport with a difficult car to drive, nearly broken, but I risked even my life for the sport, for the fans, and I have this penalty. For sure, Formula 1 is not anymore a sport.
In the race, it was all academic as Alonso's engine blew up. No points for the Renault at a crucial time. Michael won and slashed Alonso's championship lead to just 2 points.
The championship's back in our hands now. We win the last races, we win the championship. Fantastic drive, well done.
In the aftermath of victory, Michael Schumacher went public on the subject that had tantalised Formula 1 all season.
This is going to be my last Monza race I'm going to do. At the end of this year, I've decided together with the team that I'm going to retire from racing.
The announcement served only to strengthen Michael's desire for one last championship. With only 3 races to go, Renault threw away their chances of victory in Shanghai. They were 1-2 on the grid with Michael 6th, yet Renault made 2 big mistakes in the race. First, they put new front tyres on Alonso's car, which rendered it undrivable. Then, a problem with the right rear wheel cost them more time. Schumacher won, and the championship was level, 116 points each, and it was down to the wire. In Japan, all Alonso could do was hang on to the Ferrari and hope for an opportunity. On pure pace, Renault were losing. But then, on lap 37, the championship turned once again.
No! Don't believe it! Look at that! Michael Schumacher blows up! And that is Schumacher out of the race.
It was the most crushing disappointment of Michael's whole career. Chasing one last title before retirement, and his beloved Ferrari let him down. The title was effectively decided. Michael threw in the towel.
I have no hard feelings about it. That's what life is. That's what life makes sweet. You win. We won races we were not supposed to win, like the last one. We lose one we were supposed to win. That's the way it goes.
Michael went to Brazil just to chill out and race without any pressure. To have any chance of winning the championship, he'd need to win the race and Fernando Alonso not to score. He put a lovely move on his successor at Ferrari, Michael reminding Kimi, who's boss, that ultimately Schumacher's racing luck just ran out. His car suffered a puncture, and Michael finished his career in 4th place, just 4 seconds short of the final podium he craved. Felipe Massa won the race in Brazil, but Alonso's 2nd place guaranteed him his 2nd World Championship and Renault's successive constructors' titles. Renault was sad at losing Fernando Alonso, and the feeling was mutual as he said goodbye over the team radio.
Final race. 4 championships again. Thank you for all these years. It has been a pleasure for me to work with you. With this success, I wish you the best for the future.
A fantastic championship that not only had been Alonso versus Schumacher, but also a fascinating battle between the technical and tactical gurus, Ross Brawn at Ferrari and Renault's Pat Simmons.
Well, it all started well enough. You were the reigning world champions going into this season, but you already knew that you were losing Fernando Alonso at the end of the season. Surely you must have wondered why he wanted to leave you when you'd given him such a competitive package.
I think we did wonder why he was leaving. I think I still wonder why he was leaving. But, you know, things move on. He'd been with us 5 years. It probably was the right time for him to move. And let's face a new challenge.
And surely Michael's got the momentum. No! Alonso's done it!
The team won 7 of the first 9 races, Fisichella doing particularly well in Malaysia, and Alonso seemingly marching on to a 2nd world title. As ever, though, your main challengers were immediately Ferrari and your old mates Ross Brawn and Michael Schumacher.
I think that the first part of the season, it did look very good, but I don't think we were under any illusions it was going to stay that way.
When one team didn't win, the other one scored all the points. So we had a first few early races where we had an engine problem that hurt us quite a lot.
Oh, Michael Schumacher pushing enormously hard.
We made a bad tyre choice in Australia, which was down to me. And you know, we just weren't quite getting it together.
What about Monte Carlo? Obviously Michael did what he did in qualifying. Some very harsh things were said by particularly ex-drivers in the paddock. What was your own view of that weekend?
I think one of the strengths of Ferrari is that, you know, we've always been united in whatever difficult situations we've faced. You know, when you raise a family, your kids are not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but they're your kids and you look after them, and that's, you know, if you're part of the Ferrari family, you're part of the Ferrari family, whatever happens. So it was a tragedy in a way because we had such a great car that day.
Then the famous mass damper saga starting around the Hungarian Grand Prix, a device that was banned on your car. But surely your car was designed around this device.
The mass dampers were probably worth around 3 to 4 tenths of a second a lap on our cars, and that's night and day in Formula One. And of course the ban happened just at the start of the testing ban in the summer, which made it a sort of double hit for us. We had to try and re-optimise our car without getting it on the track.
He's off! Fernando Alonso is off!
You lost the race in Hungary because the wheel came off with that wheel nut problem. You must have begun to think you were going to lose this championship.
I think that was certainly the low point of the season. I think that was the win that we threw away this year. I was certainly getting concerned, but I'll never let myself think that I'm going to lose. I'll always fight for the wins.
We got ourselves in a bit of a fluster in that race, to be frank. both on the pit wall and in the car and in the race. We just didn't run that race very well. And I really wished I'd said to Michael, you know, hang on, we're going to get the points we can here. But he's a racer, and that's in his DNA.
Moving on to Monza, another penalty for you for allegedly balking Massa on his qualifying lap. How did you read that?
I do think that was a poor judgment from the stewards. I think that they were perhaps railroaded a little bit by Ferrari, baffled by science, let's say.
And then the engine failure, of course, in the race itself, when you were still in with a very good chance of some serious points.
Yeah, the one failure that Fernando experienced in the last 2 years. Disappointment, but as it turned out, evened out with Michael's failure in Japan. We'll never know whether it was due to pushing it, but it is part of our philosophy, you know, defend by attacking.
For me, Alonso deserved the World Championship. I thought he was absolutely extraordinary through the year. For example, Turkey, where he somehow managed to fend Michael Schumacher off and gave you the upper hand where perhaps it seemed as if it was lost.
On balance, yes, Fernando did do a little bit more, and I do think he deserved it, and I think it had all the more credit attached to it because he did beat Michael in such a close fight. But it was a classic year, 2 great drivers, many great races, and yes, the right man did win.
I'm extremely happy and extremely proud of what we did together with the team, working together until the last moment. It's fantastic. I think I'm really in a dreaming days. After the second championship, I visited Aston and now Bird. I feel all the support of the people, and it's fantastic. This year we fight a lot with Ferrari, very close championship, and to be decided in the last race is even more emotional.
So Fernando Alonso finished his last race for Renault as a back-to-back world champion, still only 25 years old, and now has the mantle of greatness passed from Schumacher, who pursued him all the way to that final round decider. In the end, it's championship success by a 13-point margin for Alonso. Schumacher's career ends without win number 92 that could have given him an 8th world title. And Renault hang on to the Constructors' title by 5 points from Ferrari. McLaren a very distant third and without a race win for the first time in 10 years. Our championship story has so far concentrated on how the titles and the trophies were won. But what exactly were the problems and the frustrations for the teams in more distant pursuit?
McLaren began the season by announcing that they'd signed up Fernando Alonso for 2007. This immediately made their 2 existing drivers feel they weren't wanted, which had a demotivating effect from the start. Kimi Raikkonen signed a future deal with Ferrari, and Juan Pablo Montoya had problems with the handling of the car. Both would eventually leave the team. For Montoya, this came sooner rather than later, when he announced, without giving team boss Ron Dennis prior notice, that he was leaving Formula One to race in the American NASCAR series in 2007. Ron was furious and sacked Juan Pablo Montoya on the spot.
You know, he was always on an emotional roller coaster, and I'm quite sure still if he can, control his emotions and put the passion to a very positive use, he could still be a great and have a great Grand Prix career.
How hard is to pass a car in Formula One? And if you pass it and you touch wheels, then you're an animal.
On track, the McLaren had a chronic design flaw in that the car was too easy on its tyres. This meant they couldn't get good performance in qualifying, which meant they lost touch with the leaders during the race. It was a vicious circle that left everyone at the team frustrated. But next year promises a breath of fresh air, with Lewis Hamilton driving the second McLaren alongside Fernando Alonso. Up 3 places from 8th to 5th in the Constructors' Championship makes BMW Sauber the most improved team of the season. 2 podiums were scored, first in Hungary by Nick Heidfeld and then at Monza by Robert Kubica, who was drafted into the team after they parted company with Jacques Villeneuve.
I was there with the pace and, be so competitive as Renault guys are, Ferrari, and you know, it's for us, for young team as BMW's Albon, and for me, third Grand Prix, it's a really good feeling, really good race.
Toyota had a very poor season. Jarno Trulli didn't score any points for the first 8 races, and the team appeared to be drifting along without real direction after parting company with technical director Mike Gascoigne just a month into the season. The team's only podium all year came from Ralf Schumacher in Melbourne. Red Bull's campaign was spoiled from the very start when they designed the car's aerodynamics around incorrect data concerning the cooling requirements of their customer Ferrari engine. The resulting modifications hurt the car's performance. In Monaco, the one circuit where aero isn't crucial, David Coulthard claimed the team's first podium, a result that came with its own drawback for the boss.
Christian Horner said that if his car finishes in the top 3, he will dive naked in that swimming pool on the Red Bull motorhome area.
Well, not exactly naked, but perhaps a bit of modesty was a good thing. It was Red Bull's only bright spot of the season. Next year's Adrian Newey designed chassis and customer Renault engine can only be an improvement.
You know, we all know what the goal is. We all know what work we have to do. The decision was taken, as you know already, very early in the season to concentrate on next year's car. And we're obviously hopeful that's going to be with a positive outcome.
Jenson Button and Honda will come to in a few minutes, Martin. At least they had a win to celebrate. What exactly went wrong for McLaren this season?
Season to forget, of course, summarised when Montoya ran into the back of Raikkonen in the first corner of the first lap of the American Grand Prix. Just after mid-season, Montoya's left the team. Raikkonen leaves at the end of the year to go to Ferrari, and they were winless the first time in 10 seasons.
BMW, a decent season, and they brought on an exciting new talent in Robert Kubica.
Well, I thought Villeneuve did a great job for BMW in the early part of the year, but they brought in Kubica, who was the test driver, and he just re-energised the team even further, and they were flying.
Toyota and Red Bull in particular should get more out of 2007, shouldn't they?
Well, they gave up a lot of their resources ready for the 2007 car, the Newey car, now we know with a Renault engine. And you just saw them falling back down the grid with lack of development in 06.
It was a battling season for Jenson Button and Honda. We'll see how it all came right. And of course, it's all over for Michael Schumacher. Our tribute to the 7-time world champion still to come on this Formula One review. The close season in Formula One is certainly not a time of complete relaxation for drivers or teams. The development work continues at a frantic pace, and so too does the corporate and the marketing activity. Honda have taken over the entire Royal Albert Hall, and the message on behalf of Jenson Button's team at this corporate event, I'm sure, will be strong and confident. But it comes at the end of a season for the team that's had its frustrations and disappointments, but it has had one huge day of celebration for both Jenson Button and his racing team.
This is phenomenal. You know, there are 1,000 people here from Honda, from all around the world, all under one roof. It's the first time I've ever seen this, so it's a very special occasion, and what a setting as well, the Royal Albert Hall.
Take you back to the start of the season when hopes were so high, and you were sounding as good and looking as good as just about anybody out there. So what was the stage in the first stretch of Grand Prix that you started to realise that things weren't living up to expectations?
Well, I think it was in Melbourne. You know, we had the qualifying pace, but as soon as the conditions weren't perfect, we couldn't make it work. You know, when we didn't have the heat in the tyres, we really struggled to make it work.
Disaster then for Button.
And also after that, when we got back to Europe in Imola, we made mistakes, but the car just didn't have the pace that we expected it to.
You had a new teammate in Rubens Barrichello who was pretty supportive around this time, I should think.
He was, because Rubens came into the team when we were very strong, but he also had some very good ideas. You know, he came from a team like Ferrari, who have so much experience. They've won many world championships. You know, we all did pull together. I spent a lot of time at the factory, making sure everyone was still positive, and they were. There were some difficult circumstances. I mean, with Jeff leaving, and you know, with Jeff I've worked for so many years, so that was a strange situation. But you know, I'm glad that things are all ended in a good way, and we've been able to move on. When we arrived in Hockenheim, I knew we would have a good race. We'd improved the car a lot. I love the circuit. The car always works well there. And to just be off the podium was slightly disappointing, but a nice feeling for the races to come. Hungary I didn't think would work for us. You know, it's a circuit where you need very good aerodynamics, and I thought that was the area we were weak in. but it proved that we had a good car there in the dry and in the wet. In the dry, we were in the top 3 in practice before I had my engine failure. So it was very frustrating, but we would see what we could do on Sunday. We had a strong car and we thought we could fight through and maybe give them the podium.
It was extraordinary the way that race unfolded. We of course had your teammate Anthony Davidson alongside James Allen in the commentary box.
Away they go, look for Barrichello accelerating, Massa is slow away, Raikkonen's had a good start, and Massa is being attacked by De La Rosa as they run down 4 abreast into the first corner. Massa's already lost 2 places, with the Barrichello up into 2nd place then. Michael Schumacher, is that Schumacher? He's up in 5th or 6th place. Jenson Button is up to 11th place from 14th on the grid, so an all-action opening lap here. On board with Jenson Button. Driving up the inside DC, David Coulthard for 8th place. Button's into the points. The rain is beginning to fall again here in the Hungaroring, and well, it's such a changeable situation. I wouldn't like to predict where it goes. Michael Schumacher, he is 4 seconds off Raikkonen's pace, so clearly he's in a very vulnerable time. Alonso's going around the outside of him. This is the first time these two have taken each other on all season on the racetrack. Jenson Button is moved up into 5th place. He's looking strong here.
Jenson and Massa. Oh, it's actually Michael.
So Jenson Button has passed Felipe Massa's Ferrari, Giancarlo Fisichella's Renault, and Michael Schumacher's Ferrari in just over a lap. Jenson is the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment. He's got a real rocket behind him.
Oh, there's a big crash there.
Big crash here, very big crash indeed. Can't see who's involved in it. Is it Raikkonen? It is Raikkonen. Kimi Raikkonen is out of this Grand Prix. Jenson is flying in 2nd place, closing the gap down now to Alonso to just over 5 seconds. Race leader Alonso is now coming under pressure from Jenson Button, who's taken 0.4 of a second out of him in the first sector alone. He's catching him hand over fist, and Button will soon be challenging for the lead of this Grand Prix. Ted Kravitz, this is a vital pit stop for the Honda team.
It certainly is, and there are any tyres in the pit lane for him. So just fuel for Jenson Button. He's doing exactly the same as he did in Spa last year. As we said, a little adjustment to the front wing, a good stop, but no tyres.
He's on. Fernando Alonso is off. The World Championship leader has stopped, and Jenson Button not only leads, but he leads by 22 seconds. Is it too soon to start talking about the first Grand Prix victory of Jenson Button while we lament with Fernando Alonso? This is a very important stop for the Honda team. Dry tyres going on for Button. Don't drop it, Jenson, on the dry tyres. Make sure all the wheel nuts are on, please. Let's get out there and let's win this Grand Prix. Jenson Button leads the Hungarian Grand Prix.
And yeah, as I stand up here, I'm feeling nervous for everybody at the team as well at Honda, as Jenson continues to lead this race. Over a 20-second lead now over Michael Schumacher. That's very comfortable indeed. And I can only assume that Jenson himself is the only calm one at the moment in our team.
And Schumacher's in trouble. It looks like both of the World Championship contenders are going to be out of this race. There he is. He's got less than 2 miles to go between himself and his first victory.
I didn't want it to end. You know, it's the best feeling being 30 seconds, 40 seconds in the lead of a race, knowing that you're going to cross the finish line first. And, you know, 4 or 5 minutes in the cockpit went by in a flash.
And let's hope the floodgates now open for Jenson Button, as they did for Nigel Mansell and for Damon Hill before him, because here in his 113th Grand Prix start, he's proved the critics wrong. They said he might never win a Grand Prix. He's done it! Jenson Button wins the Hungarian Grand Prix. Get in there!
You know, winning my first Grand Prix changes you in the way that you've won your first Grand Prix. You know, but it doesn't change your mentality or your way of thinking when you go into your next race at all. The last 8 races of the year, I scored more points than any other driver, so it's very encouraging. I just wish we didn't have the first 10, else we'd be world champion. But Brazil, for me, along with my win, both of them were very similar in how happy I was at the end of the race, because fighting through from 14th in the dry conditions, for me was fantastic. You know, it felt like a go-kart, the car did, and That's what Formula 1 should feel like. It should feel like a speeded up go-kart, and that's the best racing. When you see cars fighting so closely, everyone loves to see that, and I think we had a lot of that in Brazil. It was a spectacular end of the season for us, and it's something that we can really build on for next year. We're on target for when the new car comes out, and we're going into this season, well, I am personally, looking to win the World Championship, looking to fight for the World Championship. There's no other reason to be in Formula 1 in 2007 for us, and we'll see if that's a reality when we get into the new year. But we're all very positive, as we should be, and looking forward to the first race in Melbourne.
It was a tough examination for Jenson this season in just about every respect. How impressed were you with the way he came through it?
Very, actually, that he managed to keep his head in the early part of the season when it looked not too good. He said as early as Melbourne he realised he didn't have the speed that he expected after the winter testing, and how many times have we heard that? But of course he scored more World Championship points than any other driver in the final 8 Grand Prix of the year. A little bit of kidology there to a certain extent, but it does show you just how good the driver and the car were at the end of the season. They must be confident for 07.
And it's a good team package with Jenson and Rubens Barrichello working well together. How optimistic can we be for next season?
Well, they've got to win a number of races at least and have a serious pitch at the World Championship, I think. Otherwise, it'll be a disappointment.
Well, we've yet to tell the full story of the back markers in this World Championship season, and it's sad and a little bit depressing to see the name of Williams in the bottom 4.
Williams showed flashes of promise in 2006, but all too often failed to deliver results. Things got off to a promising start in Bahrain, where F1 debutant Nico Rosberg impressed with some daring overtaking moves.
And he's gone for the inside line. He'll do that comfortably now. Superb.
But reliability would prove to be the team's Achilles heel. Mark Webber led his home race in Australia, but gearbox failure robbed him of a certain podium finish. Frustrations began to creep in, and the relationship that had promised so much began to fall apart. Webber's Red Bull bound for 2007.
Didn't work at all, did it? So we didn't get the results we wanted to. It wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of It was we worked hard all together as a team, and it hasn't been easy the last few years for us.
Williams' decision to use Toyota power next year spelt the death knell for Cosworth after almost 40 years in Formula 1. 11 points and 8th in the Constructors' Championship was all there was to show for the team's worst season since 1978. 2006 saw some new names propping up the back of the grid. Gone was Minardi, reborn as Scuderia Toro Rosso under Red Bull's wing. This was to be a year of growth, but Toro Rosso made its intentions clear by involving experienced F1 personnel, including Gerhard Berger.
We have to find good people and put the team together where we can, let's say, in the next 2-3 years, clearly move to the midfield. And that's our first goal.
Tony Liuzzi scored the team's sole point with a great drive in Indianapolis, whereas Scott Speed had an uneventful debut season. 9th in Australia was his best effort.
Midland spent much of the season with doubts over the team's ownership. Sure enough, Monza saw confirmation that the Dutch car manufacturer Spyker has bought the team. Drivers Christian Albers and Thiago Monteiro struggled with a difficult car, but didn't help their cause by colliding with each other twice over the course of the year. They ended the season with no points. New on the grid this year was Super Aguri. The unofficial Honda B team looked up against it from the start, forced as they were to begin the season with a 4-year-old Arrows chassis. Headed by ex-F1 racer Aguri Suzuki, the team earned praise for even getting their cars onto the grid, but as the season progressed, so did the performance of the car. Unfortunately, Japanese driver Yuji Ide showed he was out of his depth in Formula 1, while replacements Frank Montagny and Sakon Yamamoto failed to trouble #1 driver Takuma Sato. His drive from the back of the grid to 10th place in Brazil gave Super Aguri some well-earned credibility. But Sato will have a tougher opponent alongside him in the team next year, now that Anthony Davidson has clinched a full-time Formula 1 race drive.
Desperate season for Williams, Martin, who have achieved so much in the sport. What is the way back for them?
Well, I'm a little bit confused, to be honest. If you think back to Bahrain, when Nico Rosberg was steaming through the field, did the fastest lap of the race, they appeared to have as much horsepower as anybody from that Cosworth V8. And by the season end, they were really struggling. Total lack of reliability really seemed to be their main issue. So I guess they've got to get back to basics, get the car workable, reliable, drivable, and then let their drivers come forward.
They are capable of that for sure, but what is life like at the back of the grid for the likes of the Spikers and Super Aguras of this world?
Well, it's all about potential, isn't it, and hope, and having a glass that's half full, not half empty, in terms of they've got to believe they're going to make it better. I thought Super Aguri did an amazing job from a standing start without any cars a few months before the season started, and Sato's performance at the Brazilian Grand Prix with a really genuine top 10 result there was exceptional. Spiker had a name change through the middle of the year and key personnel moving around a little bit, but again I thought they did a solid job.
Martin, thanks very much. Finally, how should Formula One reflect on the career of Michael Schumacher? Our thoughts on that and the way ahead for Ferrari in a few minutes' time. The 2006 Formula One season, the main headlines, Fernando Alonso's title and Renault's continued success. But it was also the year of Michael Schumacher's retirement, and the feeling is that Ferrari are at something of a crossroads, with Ross Brawn, their highly valuable technical director, deciding to take some time out from the sport. But in 2007, Formula One will have to get used to life without Michael Schumacher. What exactly has his talent and his influence been?
I think Michael has no bad days. You need to do everything perfect to beat him. If not, it's impossible.
He can drive every corner of every lap of every day flat out, and that takes some keeping up with.
He was one of the first, I think, to really work in every area he could think of, training and pushing the team as hard as he could.
Very few people that I've ever come across spend as much time as he does making sure his car is as perfect as it can be.
His supreme skill in the cockpit and his supreme ability to lead and inspire people who work with him.
Clever, dedicated, team player.
I don't understand why the guy stopped, honestly. I mean, it's so wasted their talent.
He's rewritten the history books with the level of success he's had, so he's an exceptional driver.
If you look the numbers, you don't need to speak a lot.
You look at my emotions and the way I have been after the race, crossing the line or on the podium, I think all those pictures could explain far more than I could put in words.
Since I'm a kid, I have enjoyed to be with four wheels, to compete, to overtake, to race. That's what I like. Success never comes from one recipe. It's a big combination of many, many things. They're important and they have to get together to be successful. Whatever area of sport or other business you be successful in.
You have people that will like me and they will always like me, and you have some that don't care, and you have the others on the other side, and whatever you do, whatever is the situation, that will remain.
Well, Ross, you knew him as well as anybody. For those who've never quite got a handle on him, what made Schumacher Schumacher?
That's a big question. I think what's difficult for people is that there are two Michael Schumachers for sure. There's a Michael Schumacher who is fighting with his fellow drivers and is hard, aggressive, tries not to show any weaknesses, doesn't give any quarter, because that's what he has to present to his other drivers. And then there's a Michael Schumacher who works in the team and works well with the people on a personal level, always concerned of people's lives, problems they have. But there's just it's that Jekyll and Hyde, but intentional, because he was determined not to show any soft side when he went out on the track. But then when he was part of the team, he was a great human being.
A couple of years ago you said to me, Ross, that you couldn't imagine working with another driver after Michael. Is that why you're taking some time out now from the sport?
I mean, this was not a coordinated effort. I felt 10 years for me at Ferrari would be a milestone. And it would be a good time, 52 years old, good time to take a gap year and then look for the next challenge, which I hope comes from within Ferrari. Michael's reasoning for his decision, I think, every driver's got to retire at some stage. Every sportsman's got to make that decision. I think he is such a proud person that he wanted to stop when he was still making a big impression, and Brazil was fantastic. Shame that the result was what it was, but it gave Michael a showcase for people to remember him by, where cruising around in the lead, which is what he could have done, it wouldn't have made such a big impression. And I think it actually changed a few people's opinion of him to finish in that way. And I'm glad that he finished in that style, because I personally wouldn't have liked to see him fade into the sunset.
And what about this team, Ross? How optimistic are you for the competitiveness of Ferrari in 2007 and beyond?
There's some very good people who've been with us for the past 10 years. Aldo Costa, Mario Mondo, Nigel Stepney, Stefano Domenicali. They've been bumping up against the ceiling. And Rory took this partial retirement, and Aldo took the reins, and you've seen the car that we've got now. And I've got every faith that people will take the reins of things that I've been doing in the past and do a better job and keep Ferrari at the front.
Well, in the last few weeks since Michael Schumacher announced his retirement, so much has been written, so many opinions about what he has achieved, how he has achieved it. What should the final verdict be?
Well, the numbers very much speak for themselves. He set a new high tide mark in every Formula One statistic that there is, of course. He alienated a lot of people in the paddock and in the press office, which seemed wholly unnecessary. He probably didn't get the send-off that he fully deserved from the Formula One paddock, to be sure. Is Michael Schumacher the greatest driver of all time? In my view, no, it's Ayrton Senna, but that's obviously a personal view. Is Michael Schumacher the most complete driver of all time? Almost certainly yes.
And has Fernando Alonso got the ability to join the likes of Schumacher and Ayrton Senna?
2 world championships already, both of them against Schumacher, of course. So Alonso showing all of the skills and speed and bravery necessary to just keep on winning races and championships.
Now the sport starts to look ahead, and in 2007, how tough is it going to be for Ferrari to absorb the loss of Schumacher and Ross Brawn as well?
It's a bit of a reset for many of the teams, actually, but Ferrari in particular, they've lost Brawn and other key people. Of course, Michael Schumacher, who could carry a car through a race and go and do 10 qualifying laps in the middle of a Grand Prix and win a race that he probably shouldn't have won. They've lost that ability. Raikkonen, though, is such a brilliant driver. I'm convinced he can turn up at Ferrari like a breath of fresh air for his career and Ferrari and keep up. A team is like a big flywheel. It takes a long time to build up momentum. And of course, it takes quite a long time for it to slow down too. So Ferrari have that momentum, and Raikkonen should make good use of it.
And McLaren desperately need to improve. Have they got the ability to give Fernando Alonso a race-winning car and a car in which he can successfully defend this championship?
Well, they've got all the resources and people that they need to do that. Alonso has a very particular driving style from what I can see. McLaren will have to mould their car around that. they've got Lewis Hamilton coming into the car as well. So a new boy who's got enormous amount of speed and talent, who should just about be hanging on to Alonso.
And how tough is it going to be as well for Renault to keep this trophy cabinet full?
I think it's going to be hard for them. Fisichella looked as if he couldn't stay with Alonso at too many points of the last couple of seasons. Kovalainen looks great, a lot of potential, but so much to learn in his first season of Grand Prix racing. So I think Renault have got a lot to do, but of course, again, another team with enormous momentum, a great car and engine.
Jenson Button leading the British Challenge in 2007, and it's a 4-driver British Challenge, which is an exciting prospect.
It is. Button, Coulthard, Davidson and of course Lewis Hamilton. Jenson has unquestionably now learned how to drive a Grand Prix car for an entire weekend and an entire season, and I think that's going to pay dividends for him in the new year. David Coulthard should have his best chance for many years actually with an Adrian Newey Red Bull Renault engine to win some races again. Davidson, I think, will go pretty well in the Super Aguri, and of course Lewis Hamilton. We're almost going to have to manage down the expectation, keep the pressure off his shoulders, because stepping into a McLaren with Fernando Alonso as your teammate is a pretty big call for a young man.
Well, Martin, thanks very much indeed. That's a quick thought on the prospects for 2007 and the story of 2006. And over the next few weeks, new cars will be launched, some bold claims will be made, and you can get all the pre-season news on the ITV F1 website. And then it all starts again in Melbourne in March, and rest assured, ITV will be there.